Now you're looking at the title. Carter, you're crazy. It's not possible. And it's very unlikely. But there is a realistic way for this to happen. I've done the math. I've been looking at the scheduling matrix in the last 3 games of the season and who could possibly drop out of the playoff picture right now. And I think I have a somewhat realistic way of looking at it. So today I'm going to go through that. I'm going to go through what every team in every conference needs to do in order for us to get there. And this is how K-State could get an at-large bid. So first of all, I just want to go over the college football playoff. And I also need to say that some of this will be my own personal opinion, and some of this will be using the college football playoff committee's opinion. So I'll try and differentiate that when I am going over all this, but that's where we're at. So first of all, CFP rankings came out yesterday, a new set of rankings. K-State actually went up to 16 despite the bye week. Don't ask me, just smile and wave, boys. So here's where we're standing right now. There are 15 teams ahead of Kansas State. We're assuming in this scenario, of course, that Kansas State, I need to be looking over here. Hello. We need to be assuming Kansas State is going to not get to the Big 12 championship. That's the first thing, because I don't think a 10-3 Kansas State is going to get there. That is just my personal opinion looking at all the matrices and whatnot. And if they do get to the title game, they need to win it, or else they're probably not going to get in it. There's probably only going to be a one bid. Big 12 will be a one bid league, basically, if Kansas State gets to the Big 12 title game and doesn't win it. That's what I think. Looking at this, I think there's easily a way for all these teams to get knocked out. And first of all, let's just start with saying which teams I think it is that are likely to get knocked out. I think it's most possible for Notre Dame, maybe Alabama. Alabama's probably not likely, but I think there's a way. Not Mississippi. I think Mississippi will lock in, and Georgia, and that's pretty much it. But let's just go over it, because I'm also assuming that 14 and 15 will drop, and of course Boise State's a wash because they're probably going to be in it. I doubt they let Tulane in as the G5 contender. Boise State has had much better losses. They only have 1 loss at that, and Tulane's 2 losses. Even if Kansas State gets in, losing to Oklahoma, you can't really be doing that, even if they win the AAC. So, yeah, let's start with the SEC. So, first of all, A&M. A&M needs to get out of here. But A&M is honestly a pretty easy one to get rid of. They play Texas in rivalry week, week 14. As long as Texas takes care of business, A&M's out. So, that moves K-State up to 15, right? And here's that proof of the scheduling matrix right here. Texas versus A&M. Texas beats A&M here. A&M's out. They're not going to be. I don't think you can put A&M above K-State in this scenario. So we're good there. So now we're at 15, right? And I talked about the possibility of Georgia dropping out. So here's what I think needs to happen, because Tennessee is also top 12 right now, and that's bad. So what I'm worried about here is if Tennessee loses, they're going to keep Tennessee and Georgia in, which is fair. 2-loss SEC team. Looks a whole lot better than a 2-loss Big 12 team, despite the fact that they only play 8 conference games. I don't make the rules, whatever. I think Tennessee needs to win this game. If Tennessee wins this game, I don't think the committee will keep Georgia above Kansas State. I think 3 losses is a breaking point for Georgia. Yes, they're all good losses. Yes, Georgia has like the hardest schedule in college football. So maybe there's a world where they don't actually drop Georgia below Kansas State. So this assumes, again, that Kansas State needs to just destroy their last 3 teams. And yeah, but Georgia losing to Tennessee, I think would drop them below Kansas State. Hopefully would. There's also a chance Tech beats them. Georgia Tech, they play Georgia Tech in rivalry week 14. Don't think it's likely. I'm not going to rule it out, though. So here's the thing, though. If Tennessee loses this game, which puts them at a 2-loss, I actually still think there's a chance they drop out of the rankings, the top 12, and they drop below Kansas State at that. And why do I think that? Well, see, there's this funny little team, right? They're usually dog water. They're terrible. At Vanderbilt is kind of looking a little scary. Not like I'm quaking in my boots scary. But it's a little intimidating. Yeah, it's not the cakewalk that it usually is. So I do think there's a chance that Tennessee does drop to Vanderbilt, and that would drop them out of the rankings. That would drop them out, not out of the rankings, sorry, out of the playoff picture. That would drop them out of the playoff picture. Kansas State would probably be in over Tennessee. So that takes care of, so that we've taken care of A&M now, and we've taken care of either Georgia or Tennessee. So that brings us up 2 spots. So now we're the 14th spot. We're at the 14th spot. How are we looking? We're looking okay. We just need some more dominoes to fall our way. Alabama's another team I could see possibly dropping, and it's very unlikely because their schedule doesn't look that hard for the rest of the season. But here's my arguments for why this could happen. So obviously Mercer is a nobody. They're going to destroy this high school team. But week 13 they get to play at Oklahoma. Now, I still think Oklahoma is a pretty good football team, even though they've been losing a lot. They have a hard SEC schedule. It's a little understandable. So why do I think Oklahoma has a chance? Oklahoma right now is desperate to get to a bowl game. They want a bowl game. They're 5-5 right now. One win would get them to a bowl game. They got at LSU and versus Alabama. Personally think versus Alabama is probably the easier game because you have home field advantage. Now, I know Oklahoma fans are fair weather. I think they'll still show up for this Alabama game, considering that ticket prices are in the triple digits. So I think there's a chance that Alabama loses this game. And on that note, I would think that would knock Alabama below Kansas State, because a loss to Vanderbilt, Tennessee is not that bad of a loss, but losing to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, yeah, that's pretty tough. That's probably going to knock you out of playoff contention, I think. So that would take care of Alabama. We're going to assume we'll knock out Alabama. Sure, why not? We'll get Alabama out of there. So what's the next domino that needs to fall our way? Let's look at the Big Ten. So in my opinion, the Big Ten here, this is crazy, by the way. Big Ten dominance all around. And I think every team except for Penn State deserves to be ranked where they are. So I don't think any Big Ten teams drop out of the ranking right now. I really don't. Like, even if Indiana loses to Ohio State, and by the way, the committee, unless Ohio State loses to Michigan and Indiana, I mean, even if that happens, I still think there's a chance the committee lets them in, just because it's Ohio State, big brand. They've had to play all 3 of the top teams. They were close with Oregon. I still could see a world where a 3-loss Ohio State gets in to the college football playoffs. So I'm going to just pretend that Ohio State is going to be in regardless. I think Indiana is the only one with a chance of dropping out. And why do I say this? So Indiana has been kind of a wild card. They've won every game so far, obviously. 10-win season, first time in school history. They 100% deserve to be ranked 5th in the nation. So where are we looking, though? They had to fight the mighty Purdue, which, great matchup, great quality television. Ohio State, we're going to assume they lose to Ohio State. 11-1, I think Indiana still gets in. But here's the thing, folks. Right now, in the Big 12, in the Big 10 standings, Oregon and Indiana are at the top, right? Indiana loses this game, they're going to drop. Now, I don't know the entire matrix. I don't know how exactly the tiebreakers are going to work. Oh, I probably need to zoom this out or something. So there is one matrix where I can see Indiana getting to the Big 10 championship game, even with the loss to Ohio State. And that's just that Ohio State loses to Michigan in week 14. I don't know the tiebreakers between Indiana and Penn State, but actually, either way, honestly, rather Indiana get to the Big Ten championship game and lose, because they're probably going to lose. Even if Penn State gets to the Big Ten championship game and they lose to Oregon, the committee will probably include them, which personally don't agree with. But that's not what matters here. What matters here is that Indiana gets to the Big Ten championship game. I don't know how the tiebreaker rules work. Let's just assume Indiana gets there. And then they lose to Oregon. So they've lost to Ohio State and lost to Oregon. Let's assume they're blowout losses. Would you then include a 2-loss Indiana over a 2-loss Kansas State? A Kansas State team that has beat Colorado and Tulane on the road. The only team in the top 25 right now to have beaten 2 other current top 25 teams on the road. I don't know. I personally, I don't know. Indiana's been blowing everyone out of the water. And yes, the Houston loss is pretty bad. But K-State has a much tougher schedule than Indiana. That's according to ESPN itself. So Kansas State over here, 42 strength of schedule. Indiana, 100. So yes, strength of resume is good right now. If you lose to those two top dogs, though, I don't know. We'll see. I think that could drop them out. But again, unlikely. Again, I'm going to assume that all these Big Ten teams are going to stay in. But that's what I think. That's how you get a Big Ten team out of the way. We're going to assume they're all going to stay locked in, though. So Kansas State now, we're up to number 13. So how do we take care of SMU? SMU is a problem right now. It's a problem. It might not be a problem, though. It really might not. So, sorry, wrong tab. So here's what we're looking at here. SMU is probably going to win the rest of their games. They have to play Virginia, and they have to play California and Boston College. They could drop a game. I don't think they will. I'm actually pretty high on SMU right now. I think they're a pretty good football team. They've only lost to undefeated BYU, and that was a pretty close game too. No, they haven't really played anyone, but I still think they played Louisville and they played Pitt, and they did really good against them. So I'm high personally. I'm big on SMU right now. I know that's kind of controversial, but it is what it is. They're a good football team. So how do we get them out of here? I mean, it's really not that complicated, actually. SMU right now is at the top of the ACC conference. Clemson is number 2 and Miami is number 3. So my concern is that no matter what happens with Miami, even if they lose in the ACC championship game, they're probably going to still get in. So we need ACC to be a one bid team, and judging off the rankings right now, I think that if SMU drops a game, they're going to drop below Kansas State and they're not going to get in, even if they go to the ACC title game and lose. So right now, the ACC title game is slated to be SMU versus Clemson. If the dominoes fall right, Miami will play SMU instead, and Miami needs to win that game, obviously, and that drops SMU out. So now we've taken care of, that was pretty simple. That was a lot simpler than the Big Ten. Jesus. All right, we've taken care of A&M. We've taken care of SMU. We've taken care of Georgia. We've taken care of Alabama. Where does that put us? That puts us at 15, 14, 13, 12. That puts us at 12, and Boise State is in. But I still think there's some dominoes that could fall for us. I'm looking at Notre Dame right now, right? I'm looking at Notre Dame. That's not Notre Dame. That's not Notre Dame. That's Notre Dame. So Notre Dame, looking at the rest of their schedule, they're probably not losing to Virginia, right? They're probably not. The Army game, though, that Army's a good team. I could definitely see Notre Dame dropping that. And now, if Notre Dame loses to Army and NIU, do you really have them above a 2-loss Kansas State, who has lost to BYU, the Big 12 champion, and beat Colorado on the road, who's also top 25, and beat Tulane on the road, who's also top 25? Do you really have NIU above that? Who is NIU beat? Literally A&M. That's their one good win. That is their only good win right now. Looking in hindsight, Louisville's a good win too, I feel, but that's your only good win on the schedule. Navy's an okay win. Actually, given the result, it's probably a good win. At USC, I wouldn't even call USC out of that dogfight versus Notre Dame, because USC took it very close to Penn State. I think USC is a tough place to play at, even though the stadiums don't look super full, but I think at USC is going to be a tough environment to play at. And USC is another team that is very desperate to make a bowl game, especially if they can beat either Nebraska or UCLA. They're going to need that win against Notre Dame. They're going to bring their A game. I could definitely see Notre Dame falling out of this. And where does that put Kansas State? Comfortably in the top 12. I say comfortably. This assumes the dominoes fall correctly. That's what I mean by comfortably. Now, I think the other thing that K-State needs to make sure it does, though, is win these last 3 games and win them. Obviously win them, but win them with tenacity. Is that the right word? They need to just blow these guys out of the water. They need Arizona State to just get demolished. They need to demolish Cincy. They need to demolish Iowa State, which Iowa State, I would say, is still a good win despite the last couple of weeks versus KU and Texas Tech. Obviously, That needs to happen because Kansas State needs all the help it can get right now, and it needs to get out of its own way. So I think it's very possible Kansas State finds itself in Big 12, in a not in Big 12 contention, but as an at-large bid, even if they don't get to the Big 12 championship game. I actually think it's better if they don't. I think a three-loss Kansas State and a 3-loss Colorado. This assumes if Kansas State gets to the Big 12 title game, Colorado's going to have 3 losses. And in this scenario, I don't think there's a world where Kansas State or Colorado would make an at-large bid in this scenario. I would think, because I would think BYU would be the only one who would make it. If Kansas State wins the Big 12 and BYU wins out and then loses in the Big 12, I think that's pretty much the only world where you get 2 bids to the college football playoffs. Or Colorado could win it too, and then you'd also have 2 bids because BYU would be an at-large and Colorado would just get in. So hopefully that doesn't happen though. I think the committee already recognizes that Kansas State is a better team than Colorado. So even if Colorado does get to the Big 12 title game, as long as Colorado loses, I think the committee will still favor Kansas State because Colorado will have 3 losses. They will have lost to Kansas State, they will have lost to BYU, who K-State also lost to, and they will have lost to Nebraska. Losing to Nebraska is basically the equivalent for K-State losing to Houston. Both like kind of bad losses, but maybe enough to get them in. I think the biggest thing for K-State that needs to happen, that's completely out of its control other than a Colorado loss, is Houston needs to make a bowl game. And it's looking very likely. Of course, Houston got blown out by Iowa State and Cincinnati. But I don't know. Maybe they're figuring things out. They beat TCU in Fort Worth. They beat Utah. They beat Kansas State. Maybe they figured it out. I don't know. Of course, you don't want them to lose. You want them to lose at BYU, but all they need to do is beat Arizona and Baylor, and they have a bowl game. So I think that needs to happen. I think it might not need to happen because they're already ranking K-State as the 16th best team in the nation. So maybe it doesn't need to happen. It would really help though. We also need Tulane to stay in the top 25, and we need Colorado to stay in the top 25. All 2 of those need to happen. I think for Tulane, it's very possible, but Navy and Memphis are looking like kind of scary games. So send hopes up to Tulane. I'm a big Green Wave fan for the next few weeks. So that is how Kansas State can make an at-large bid into the big dance. Are we calling it the big dance, or is that only a basketball thing? I don't know. I think it's possible though. That's why I just want to talk about it today, because I really do think Kansas State, I don't even think this is a ridiculous ask. I don't think it is insane to think that if Texas A&M loses one, they're obviously going to be below us. If FSMU loses an ACC title game, they're probably going to be below us. If Georgia loses to Tennessee, they're probably going to be below us. If Alabama loses to Auburn or Oklahoma, they're probably going to be below us. If Notre Dame loses to Army or USC, they're probably going to be below us. If Tennessee loses to Georgia and Vanderbilt, they're probably going to be below us. That's where I'm sitting right. If Indiana loses to Ohio State and Oregon, there's a chance that they're below us. Likely, probably not. It could happen though. I could see it. Indiana has had a cakewalk schedule, so they get blown out by the 2 teams with a pulse that they play on the season. I could maybe see it. I could maybe fudge the numbers a little bit, Maybe could see it. So I think Kansas State does have a chance. I don't think we're out of this. It's out of K-State's control, really. Its destiny is out of its hands, but I do think it's possible. And yeah, I just want to talk about it, nerd out. Long video, sorry about that, but all good stuff. I hope I have opened your eyes to the possibilities of Kansas State making this college football playoff. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate it. Leave your comments down below. Love to hear from you all. And man, I used this camera angle like once this video, but I kind of had to show all the rankings the entire video. So thank y'all for watching. Appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day, and go Cats.